Welcome to UC Trends 2024. It's that time of year again, folks, when we meet UC Award winning companies to discuss what trends will shape the year ahead. So in this session, I'm joined by Derek Peabody, Product Management Director of Business Solutions at Verizon, and we're going to be discussing the merits of using Microsoft Teams for your phone system and the steps you need to take to be successful. Welcome, Derek.
Thanks, Rob.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
So happy to be here and share some of what we've been doing with Microsoft Teams and calling at Verizon.
Yeah, absolutely. And Derek, you've been in product management at Verizon how long?
27 years. I like to say I started when I was 5 years old because there's no way that's possible. Most of my career has been around voice services, sort of with the evolution of voice. And I very much look at what we're talking about today sort of as the next big shift in how people are using voice to communicate.
Yeah, I bet you've seen it all. I imagine all the way back to kind of like the analog PBX, I would imagine.
Yeah, Rob, even analog PBX. And at one point I managed all of our Plano telephone service business for businesses as well. So yeah, I've definitely seen a great evolution as we moved from that through PRI, through voice over IP, cloud communications, and now really mobile UC.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, lots of trends I'm sure you've seen, but we are looking at one big trend today. So we are talking Microsoft. I think it was 2007 when Microsoft first released their Office Communicator platform, their first business communication solution. I think that later it was Lync and then Skype for Business. And I know it was 2017 that Microsoft Teams was launched because UC Today was launched in 2017 as well. So that year stays in my mind all the time. But what a journey it's been. So I suppose today we're focusing on a big trend, and that's ditching the phone system and going all in on Teams by enabling it with full calling capabilities. So to start, Derek, let's talk transitioning to Teams. How does Microsoft Teams integrate with existing communication systems, and what challenges should businesses anticipate during the transition from traditional phone systems to Teams?
So as everybody knows, Microsoft Teams has really had explosive growth over the last several years. And as part of that growth, Microsoft is really trying to bring all of the services that somebody needs into the Teams environment. And that now includes calling. And there's really different ways that Microsoft enables calling with Teams. They've got direct routing options as well as Operator Connect. And the most recently announced one from last year is Teams Phone Mobile, which does integrate mobile devices natively with the Teams service. And this is really allowing customers to, number one, save money by eliminating redundant or older legacy phone systems, Rob, like you alluded to. Some customers are still using PBXs that have been out there for quite some time. Other customers have made the move to cloud. But this whole consolidation of services is not just beneficial from a company administrative perspective, but also from an end user perspective. We've heard from a lot of end users around the globe, Rob, that they're struggling, right, with too many disparate communication tools, systems. You know, I'm using a cell phone, I'm using my laptop, I'm using this, I'm using that. And by centralizing all of this in Teams, including calling, collaboration, and using Verizon for that calling service to reach out to people that may not be in the Teams environment, is really helping businesses simplify, not just from an administrative perspective, like I said, but really from the end user's perspective, which I think is just as important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose one killer question, the elephant in the room, is always cost, isn't it? And how much does Microsoft Teams cost versus maybe operating a conventional phone system or another UCaaS solution? I mean, from your perspective, how does this compare and ultimately impact the operational budget for organizations?
We're seeing two ways of cost savings for customers by enabling calling in Teams. The first one is just the actual any calling service with Teams. Since it is cloud-based, doesn't require a lot of prem-based equipment. That's letting customers just save money by moving the calling to Teams in and of itself. They don't have to power PBXs, maintain them, pay for the calling on top of that, whatever license they may have on that PBX. So that's just the general cost savings. And the other thing that we're really seeing, Rob, is there's still a lot of people out there that have what I call dual identity or two phone numbers. So they've got a mobile device, a smartphone in their pocket. That's probably the primary way they communicate. But they still have a landline number that, maybe is forwarded to their cell phone, or it could just be not doing anything at all. But what we're seeing is a consolidation or elimination of that redundancy. So for your road warriors, your people that are out in the field all the time, that are really, living by that smartphone, it's been easy to eliminate that redundant wireline connection, which has been a really large cost savings for some of the customers that have deployed. Now, no customer has been all mobile yet or all fixed. There's sort of a mixture of those two things. But by having both options, not only can you do cost savings like we're talking about, but you can really meet the end user where and how they work. So don't give a road warrior a wireline number anymore, and make sure that, people that are more fixed have those options for more, traditional wired services or voice over IP services. But again, Rob, all coming through that Teams platform.
Absolutely. And we're all talking about hybrid work nowadays. Even return to the office now is a big trend and likely to continue into 2024. But productivity is a big thing now, and you see platforms like Teams really kind of underpins productivity within workforces, especially these dispersed workforces, as you were just talking about. So how do we measure this? What kind of productivity metrics should we look at? How do we know that our investment in Teams calling, for example, was a good one?
Besides the cost savings, and as you're talking through this, Rob, the productivity increases. There are a few studies out there. I won't quote them here and bore folks, but just by eliminating that context shifting of I'm using my mobile device, no, I'm going to use my laptop, I'm going to use my desk phone, and centralizing all of that with Teams, and again, meeting the end user where and how they work, there's like over 10% of productivity savings just by eliminating all of that various ways that people have to use different tools. And that, again, is not just the productivity increase, but the end user satisfaction by just not being so frustrated with I'm using an app, I'm using my native smartphone, and letting them use the way and the communication mechanisms that really they prefer to use, because it's all supported with Verizon calling services and Teams now.
Yeah, and I can imagine since everyone's gone hybrid and they've gone everywhere to work, you can now work from anywhere, any country, any device virtually. So there's a lot of complexity. And one thing about the conventional PBX that was screwed into the IT cabinet was, it was safe, it was secure, it was compliant. What do we do about compliance and security nowadays with, how does Microsoft and Verizon handle that in this scenario, in this new calling scenario?
I shouldn't say obviously, but both Verizon and Microsoft are hyper security conscious, as they should be. So I'd say a few things here. From a security perspective, the security that you know and trust from both Microsoft and Verizon certainly applies to Teams and Teams calling. And then from a compliance perspective, the Teams platform itself has got compliance functionality, largely from a message and voice recording perspective. Teams doesn't support the compliance platform itself, but they enable other platforms out there, well over 18, I think, to store, manage, and from a compliance perspective, both all the Teams messages as well as voice. And one thing, Rob, that's been very interesting to customers that have these compliance needs over the last year is for the first time with Teams Phone Mobile, which Verizon calls Verizon Mobile for Microsoft Teams, we're able to record native smartphone voice traffic in a compliance manner. And to my knowledge, Rob, that has been impossible in the entire industry until now. So that's been very interesting, again, coming back to field-based people, traders, people in the financial services industry that, again, are using their smartphone as their primary communication method. Now all of those calls can be automatically recorded through Teams and some of those compliance platforms, and the end user doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to worry about, am I using an app? What am I doing? They just pick their smartphone up, use it like they always do, and they've got compliance with that.
And I think that's really key, isn't it? And that's a nice segue into my next question around kind of user experience, especially in the hybrid workplace. That versus a traditional phone system, it almost feels like a traditional phone system was too rigid to even offer a hybrid work experience. But how at Verizon you offer connectivity, you offer the calling plans, the numbers, and all that kind of thing. How does all that experience come together? And I know you wanted to touch on Teams Phone Mobile, because I think that's an interesting solution as well that we're hearing more and more about nowadays. So, what does that kind of solution look like from your perspective?
I'll use myself a little bit, Rob, as an example here. So I run Verizon Mobile for Microsoft Teams, Teams Phone Mobile on this smartphone. And that phone number is now my Teams identity. So I've also used that phone number to enable Teams apps on the PC that I'm talking to you on, even on a desk phone over there that you can't see, and on my tablet. And the beauty of this is I can use any of those devices to make and receive calls, to use Teams. I can have my desk phone at my fixed location, maybe in my office. I bring my smartphone everywhere I go, obviously. But that endpoint flexibility and unifying your Teams calling identity around your mobile phone number really is helping hybrid workers have that same experience regardless of where they are. Teams, functions the same on the PC, on the laptop. Of course, a desk phone is a little bit different, but that unified experience across those sort of hybrid endpoints has been super beneficial. I don't think just to myself, but to others that aren't always in the same physical location.
And it's probably just worth touching on this for some of our audience that may not know this, but Teams Mobile, what's the difference between just opening the app, and connecting to Teams over, a 5G network, for example?
Rob, that is a great question. And with the Teams Phone Mobile integration that Verizon has done, you get to use your smartphone natively if you want to. And by natively, I mean you just open your smartphone, you don't use the Teams app, and you can place and receive calls. And why that's important is all mobile providers have their networks sectioned. And when I say section, there's the data portion, and all apps run on the data portion, whether it's 4G or 5G. And then there's the voice portion. And the voice portion has got the highest quality of service. It's VoLTE voice. So if you happen to be in a low data coverage area, I actually had one customer that had their end users literally in trenches, and they were struggling to have data connectivity, but they had great voice connectivity. But it brings that VoLTE voice experience to Teams, but with the option on that same smartphone or on other devices, Rob, to uplift that call from voice only into the full Teams experience, which is a super seamless experience. It's really easy to do. You don't drop the call. And again, it gives you that flexibility. Maybe you're driving, you don't need full Teams. Maybe you are in a poor data coverage area, or maybe you just want to use voice because you don't need video. You can do that, but if you do have to end up collaborating with somebody or you need video, you can easily take that voice-only call from your smartphone and uplift it into the full Teams experience. Again, either on that same device or even on your PC or your laptop if you needed a bigger screen.
Well, thanks for explaining that. This is a big trend, everyone, that we're seeing more and more of. So certainly, if you've not looked at Teams Mobile as a solution for your hybrid workers, wherever they are, road warriors, whatever, it's certainly worth digging into. So thanks for that, Derek. I'm completely sold. I'm ready to sign up. I want to deploy calling on Microsoft Teams, Derek. User adoption and training. How do we ensure success and make that nice and smooth for teams and users?
One of the things, Rob, that we're seeing is as a critical step is coming back to where and how your end users work and sort of identifying each end user and what the best Teams calling service for them would be. Now, that's part of a broader decision. I'll come back to the 3 ways that calling gets enabled in Teams first, and then talk about why this is important. So again, Microsoft has direct routing. Direct routing uses dedicated session border controllers, a network element for those that may not be familiar with them, per customer deployment. And the beauty of that is you've got a lot of flexibility. You can integrate other things with that session border controller. And Verizon offers that in over 110 countries, I believe. So a nice global offer. It uses our IP trunking or VoIP network to do that. And then there's Operator Connect, which is sort of like direct routing, but instead of the session border controllers being per customer, they're Verizon managed. So it offloads some of the complexity from the customer. They don't have other integrations they need to do. Operator Connect is also a global offer right now in North America, but rapidly expanding to other countries where Verizon does have an IP trunking footprint. And then, of course, we already talked about Teams Phone Mobile. But once you've made the decision about whether you're a direct routing candidate or an operator connect one, then look at your users and decide, is this a road warrior? Teams Phone Mobile is probably a better solution for them. Or is this somebody that's generally in the office, most of the time, or maybe doesn't even have a smartphone? Then you can use your direct routing or operator connect. So what we're seeing is as customers put those groups together, they're also running some pilots. Pilots are pretty easy to do just to make sure everybody understands from an administrative perspective how this is all going to go. And then they build sort of a rollout plan, generally by user group, maybe the mobile first and then the fixed or vice versa. But that whole categorization, I think, of what your end user needs is a critical first step for almost any employee and company.
And from a future-proofing point of view, the workplace continues to change. It's probably going to change more and more in the year ahead. Does this solution kind of help, get a business ready for those changes, ready for whatever situation comes down the line?
I think it does, Rob, because again, you've got that hybrid functionality. Not to revisit back to 2020, which I don't think all of us would like to forget about, but a lot of companies were caught with not a lot of solutions because they didn't have that flexibility. And with Teams and Verizon's calling solutions, you've got all that flexibility that you need. So you can even take a user that maybe is more fixed today and just change their calling over to a mobile device. Microsoft doesn't support mixing different calling services on a per user basis, but they absolutely do on a per tenant or customer basis. So that gives you that flexibility of, maybe you ultimately want to become all mobile. That seems to be where the world is going. But you can start, some of your users on some of the more fixed services. And as you evolve to a more mobile strategy, you're already future-proof because it's just a calling plan change from a team's perspective, versus a complete rip and replace of hardware, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I suppose to round today's session up, top tips for success, what would you say to our audience that are looking to maybe deploy Microsoft Teams calling and go all in on Microsoft Teams?
I think, not to reiterate what I just said about making sure that you know where your end users fit in terms of their calling patterns, what devices they prefer to use. That's absolutely critical. Again, a pilot, I think, makes a lot of sense. And then sort of having a framed out rollout plan, right? So that it doesn't just languish. Everybody's super busy these days, but sort of build a schedule, so to speak. Oh, I'm going to run a pilot for so long with so many users. Maybe you expand that pilot a little bit larger for a period of time, and then just follow your rollout plan. Like really build one that makes sense for what resources you have. We are seeing people do this pretty rapidly, especially on the mobile side, because it's not super difficult to enable. So again, I think the whole thing is start with a plan. That plan should probably include a proof of concept so everybody can learn a little bit, incorporate what you've learned from that proof of concept into your broader rollout plan, but always have that right from the get-go of, what your end state is going to be and a phased way to get there.
That's great advice. Always start with a plan. Always think about what outcomes you're looking for. Superb. Thank you, Derek, so much. It's been great talking to you today, but I'm afraid that's all we've got time for.
Hey, thank you so much, Rob. Hopefully this is going to be helpful to people out there making those Teams calling decisions. It's been really a great effort this year. We've seen a lot of interest in it, and I think that's just going to continue to accelerate. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks again, and all the best for the new year. That's it from us. If you've enjoyed today's interview, you can catch up on all the UC Trends series at uctoday.com/trends. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.